Okay, so part 3 of My Physical Body on Alone Season 6 is talking about what happened from when I left. So I was still fairly strong and capable. I knew I was on the verge of not being so, but I still was when I left. And it was kind of funny to me because they were really treating me like such a delicate flower. People were like, "Oh, are you okay? Can I help you with that?" And like, "Here's a warm chair to sit in." And I was like, why are you treating me like I'm some piece of porcelain? I've been sitting on the ground for months. I've been taking care of myself and moving my stuff and doing whatever I had to do by myself for months. And then I got checked out by the doctor and he told me, yes, absolutely, we were planning to pull you today. We were not going to let you be out there in your condition for any longer. And after that, I had a few moments to go and grab a quick shower before getting in a plane and going to the ER in Yellowknife, which was probably hundreds of miles away. And then I walked into that bathroom and I looked at my face in the mirror, and holy crap. In that moment, I understood why they were treating me like that. I was so gaunt with these shrunken cheeks. You can see in the footage of me in my last moments those creases in my face, and you can see how weird the angles here are because I had no fat left on my frame, not on my face, not on my cheeks, nowhere in my body. My collarbones stuck out so far from my chest, my ribs all in fine detail, you know, the shrunken belly, the zero butt, zero boob. Like I'm a well-built, strong, round woman in general, and I was skeletally thin with none of the parts that I am used to having, none of the curves and the shape. And that was when I really got how much weight I had lost. That was the first time from our very first medical check when they actually let me see the numbers on the scale, and I realized that I was down around 100 pounds. I mean, I was probably in like 6th grade or younger the last time I weighed that much. I think there was something about seeing myself that skinny that allowed myself to feel a little bit weaker in my body than I had, because while I was out there, I was just in it, you know? I was living it and doing whatever it took and not really allowing for the feeling of what's my body actually saying it needs right now. Besides, I knew that it needed food. But once I came out and gave myself permission to feel it, I was so much more aware of the huge change in my physical person. And the other thing is, you hear me talking about biscuits and butter right before going out, after I've had my epiphany of knowing that that's what I need to do. And I didn't know at that point that you don't get to just eat whatever you want when you have been starving for months. Not unless you're willing to risk major damage, potential death. So there are all of these different factors of why it's so important to be very, very careful with eating again. One is your whole digestive system is shrunk and a bit shut down. Mine was less so than a lot of other people's because I had never gone without eating. Some of the reasons why I think I did so well was because I was eating cranberries every single day. You know, once it got to the point where the constipation was becoming a real issue, from that point on, I drank plenty of water, I drank a lot of chaga tea, and I ate cranberries every day, so my body was always moving something through. It kept my vitamins up, it kept my minerals up, and I had pemmican until the very end. So while it was nowhere near enough calories, I had a little bit of fat every day. Now, in a lot of the early days when it wasn't that cold, I would go days without eating pemmican. Even if I wasn't bringing in food, I would just eat pemmican every other day. By the time it got down to the lower temperatures, 15 degrees and less, I was not willing to go a day, and it felt important not to go a day without any food. So I do feel like I was able to handle things in my recovery a lot better than some folks. And yes, I had to be very, very careful, and I wasn't able to eat anywhere near what I was hoping for some time. Now, I started on clear broths, bone broth, pureed vegetables, and then teeny little portions. And at that point, I had been so hungry for so long. That was the hardest part. That was the hungriest, was when all of a sudden I was in a world of people and food that I couldn't eat without potentially damaging myself. That was really, really hard. And the other thing was, food was so profound. It was amazing. I mean, even though I was just getting little snacks with some frequency rather than, a big meal because my system couldn't hold it, even just having a little snack meant so much to me. I was this exquisitely tuned machine. I felt like my skin was just saran wrap. I felt so raw and sensitive, and even just shut up in a room by myself, my sensory system was amazing. And especially around food, the flavors of food, when you've had so little for so long, being able to have salt and sweet things was amazing. And my body was so fine-tuned. I could feel when I had burned through the very last calorie from my last snack, and I would start to freak out. I was on a snack schedule, so I would have 3 meals a day with a little snack in between, and I would know when to expect that snack. And if they were 15 minutes late bringing my snack, I would start to have a panic attack, and I would get very emotional, and I would just feel like a little child, which was fascinating to go from being out in the world, all the autonomy and sovereignty in the world, complete control over everything that I chose to do in any minute of the day, and totally in control of whether or not there was food just based on my actions. Not that I didn't have less food than I would have wanted if I had had total control, but you know what I mean, right? Choosing for myself how I was going about things, to all of a sudden not having any autonomy and in a little room on a snack schedule. And it was a big room, but in a room. And I felt, so sensitive. And I could feel exactly the nutriment content of my food, right? I knew if there was enough protein in that snack, and I'd be like, you know what? I need a little bit more protein than this. My body has to have a little bit more protein. And then they would adjust my snack a little bit. And then I'd be like, okay, now this is not quite enough fat. I need this much more fat to get me through to this many hours. And they would adjust it a little bit. I have never felt so aware. It was like I could feel the calories in that food singing to me. I could feel that food pulsing with life. I knew what every teaspoon of calories meant to my body. It was amazing. And food was so emotional. It was weeks before I could sit in front of a plate of food without bursting into tears. Not because I was sad, not because I was joyful, just at the overwhelm of so many mixed emotions, just at having a plate of food that just arrived there in front of me. It was amazing, and I miss that, honestly. I mean, I'm already back to the point where I've been used to being in a place where food is so accessible for a while. I already take it for granted, more than I ever thought I would after going through that experience. So that's what my first couple of weeks out were just so aware of food and what it meant. The other thing is that I started putting weight back on pretty quickly because I didn't realize this until I was out. But when you're in a state of ketosis, you have much less water in your system because mostly we store food on our bodies, well, certainly in the form of fat, but first we store it in the form of glycogen, which is a carbohydrate made of a lot of sugars. For every molecule of sugar in your body, there's 2 molecules of water to store it. So as soon as I started getting some carbohydrates back in, all of the water started to go back too, and my tissues really filled out. So even within a day, my skin looked way less wrinkly and papery, way less definition in all of the bones sticking out within one day. So I don't have photos of the first day I came out. The soonest photos I have are about 24 hours after I came out. And already I'm looking less shrunken, and that's mostly from water weight. So I put on about 8 pounds the first week, mostly from water, and starting to build my tissues back up a little bit. And then I would say I went to like 16 pounds within the first couple weeks, and then I just kind of stayed there for a while and was having a hard time putting weight back on. And I think partly is because my body wasn't putting that on as weight. It was using it to repair all of these things that it hadn't been able to repair out there. So my weight didn't come back on for a while, and then it started coming back on after maybe 3 weeks, and then it came on in weird ways. So I still had like no boobs, no butt, no hips, skinny arms, skinny legs, but I was starting to get a paunch. I was putting on just like the spare tire just in my middle. So totally different proportions than I'm used to. Like skinny little stick figure with this paunch. It was pretty weird. It was unnerving. It did not feel like my body. And then I started to fill out other places. My boobs first. It was a while before my butt rebuilt, honestly. That was the last thing to come back. But I would say it was like probably 2 or 3 months before my body started to come back into its normal proportions. So I did get my period once out there early on, day 26, and then it didn't come back again, which I was even surprised that it had come at all, frankly, given how little I was eating my first couple weeks. But it was a while of eating again before it came back. So I'd been out for at least a month and a half and eating well before it came back. So that meant a total of like 3 months without it. And then there were other things too that just unexpectedly happened. Like I had fallen on the rocks out there while I was carrying big stones for my hearth, and I hadn't been able to see my feet because I was carrying stones and it was really snowy and it was a little slippery, and I had fallen hard and I had banged my knee, and then it never really was an issue out there. It didn't really bruise, it didn't really have any issues. Well, I had been out for about 2 months when all of a sudden my knee just swelled up and was really sore and swollen and just like super liquid, like all this, just like it was a water balloon, you know, just like big and swollen and watery. And I was like, what's happening? I didn't do anything to it. And then I realized I'm pretty sure that was a delayed reaction from that original injury, because my body just didn't have the resources to heal it at that time. It didn't have the calories, it didn't have the protein. So it's just like, meh, we'll deal with this when we can, or not at all if we can't. So I had been out for a couple months before all of a sudden it was like, okay, my body's like, yep, now we've been safe enough, long enough that we know we have the extra food that we can go ahead and repair this damage to the knee. So there were little things like that for the first many months. So that's some of my physical process. Also pretty significant was just the mental, emotional, psychological process. And that was just that I definitely felt, I don't want to say unsafe, but you know, when you've lived that close to the edge in a survival situation for that long, it's really hard to just let go of that and just be like, yeah, I'm chill, it's just life is normal. No, I mean, I've always been a person who has my knife on my hip most of the time, but I was also carrying that multi-tool and that ferro rod with me everywhere I went, and a little bit of cordage everywhere I went for quite some time. Not that it's a bad idea to do in general. I was definitely having issues with compulsive eating for the first couple months, just, you know, knowing that I was eating more than I needed, but not having that stop signal, and eating things that I knew weren't necessarily healthy for me, or the things that I would normally feel compelled to eat. I was back in time for Christmas, you know, and man, I made so many different kinds of Christmas cookies, and I was so into Christmas cookies, and I was eating a lot of them. And finally, you know, this was while I was having the paunch and the weird body shape, and finally I got to the point where I was like, this isn't good. I need to get a handle on this. I need to clamp down on my eating, and that I wasn't really able to. And normally I'm a person with like pretty strong will and pretty good at listening to my body and making healthy choices, and that was really hard. After the period of my weight redistributing, I was also putting on a lot more weight than I wanted to. So it was like a lag in putting weight on, and then all of a sudden it kept coming and coming and coming, more than I wanted it to. And I was putting on, you know, 3/4 pound to a pound a day, but felt kind of powerless to do anything about it. And then I went to a gathering that I've been teaching at for 20 years, and I met Callie North from season 3 in Patagonia there. And her advice was, Woniya, just let yourself eat. Just let yourself have as much as you feel like you want. You know, your body needs that. And so I decided she was right, and to just not try to clamp it down. And I just let myself eat without any shame or any trying to control it. Just like let my body eat what it felt like it needed to. What it felt like it needed to feel safe. And like it wasn't gonna be in a situation like that again. And once I did that, it all leveled off within a couple weeks. That was the most powerful thing I did in that time of healing, was just let it go and trust my body to know what it needed to heal physically and psychologically from that level of deprivation. And before long, all of a sudden, I didn't feel like I needed to eat more than my body actually needed in the moment. I finally got to the point of like, okay, I have enough. I get to have enough. I don't have to worry about starving. And that was huge. And so that was, I would say, about 4 months out before I really felt fully healed in those ways. By like 3 months out, I was starting to feel really physically strong and able to exercise as much as I wanted again. And that felt really good. However, I went on a trip with my dad and his wife and a friend of theirs in March, and I came back from that trip with a little bit of a flu, and I was kicking the flu and it was feeling better and better, and then all of a sudden it turned a downturn and I got super weak and my fever spiked and I could barely eat, and you know, really, really weak and uncomfortable and pounding headache and really high fevers and a lot of trouble breathing. And after a couple weeks, ended up in the ER and had pneumonia. And normally I feel like I'm a person with a pretty resilient system and immune system, and that flu took such a downturn. I feel fairly certain, and I've talked to other survival experts about this, but that was a result of that deep, deep trauma and stress that my body went through. So in that way, I think that some of my deep reserves definitely were pretty tapped by the experience. But once I got better from that flu, I would say I've been feeling pretty much super healthy since. The only lingering symptoms that I've had since that point are my nails. It's getting a lot better, but very thin and brittle and breaking a lot more easily. For the first many months, my hair, a lot of my hair fell out while I was out there, and when I was first out, like a lot of my hair. So my hair is definitely thinner than it used to be. It's still fairly thick, but it used to be really thick. And then also my tooth enamel felt a little bit thinner and really stained, and my teeth a little bit more sensitive. So those have been my major symptoms. And then another thing is that this whole summer, I've been having a lot of cold sores. And cold sores used to be fairly uncommon for me. I would get them every year or two. From the time the show came on air in June to now, I've had 4 cold sores. So that was 4 cold sores in 3 months. And that is way more than I ever had before. And I think, again, that's part of a symptom of just like tapping my deep reserves, and also the stress of watching myself. So that has been significant. The stress of never knowing when you're going to be on an episode and when you're not, and what they're going to show of you, and what they're going to leave out that felt really important to you, and what they're going to, manipulate with the editing to make it seem like you were having this experience that doesn't feel like what you remember that experience being. It was very, very stressful. So I think the combination of those stresses and traveling all summer and the deep reserve tapping, that's another lingering system. But I feel like I've got that one figured out, and I figured out this wonderful herbal formula that I've been using for my lips whenever I have cold sores, which I have another video about, which I super recommend. But yeah, besides that, I feel like those are some really minor physical symptoms. Overall, I feel really, really physically well, strong, vital, healthy, totally back to how I like to be in my body. I will say I'm probably carrying a few more pounds than I was before going out, but that feels great. That feels fine and totally makes sense, right? That my body would need a little bit more reserve to feel safe in the world now than it did before. So hallelujah, whatever my body needs is great. And yeah, for the most part, I would say that I do not feel worse off physically. If anything, I feel better. I feel better and stronger and healthier in so many ways. One thing is that your fat is where most of our environmental toxins are fat soluble. So it was like a huge detox for me, right? I burned through every bit of fat that I'd been carrying for the last, well, not all of it was 40 years old, but everything that needed to be let go of, I got to let go of. A huge cleansing and detoxing from that, right? I got to have all of this cellular repair, long-term chronic issues healed out there because I wasn't wasting energy digesting. So my body was able to do all of the cellular repair. And then because I left at the right time, my body got to experience that it is so capable of still functioning on so much less than I ever knew, right? My belief in my body and its capacity now is tremendous. So much more empowered than I've ever been in my own capacity. And that's amazing. That is going to have way more lingering effects than the experience of starvation. Another thing is that I got to experience what most human bodies have experienced for most of our long history, right? Regular famines and going hungry a lot, that was a fact of life for most peoples before modern times. So I got to be in touch with those deep ancestral parts of myself and really feel and understand what that was like in this deep, visceral way that most people never get to experience in America at any rate. Certainly there are still places in the world, far too many of them, where people experience it. But most people in, the first world or the developed world don't get to understand what that's like or know how their bodies deal with that. I now know that my body dealt with it really well. So in so many ways, I feel better off and better off physically for my time out. And that's not something I was expecting. And again, I think it all comes back to the choice to leave when I did, how I did. I've been in touch with a lot of the other folks on this season and other seasons. A lot of people didn't fare as well as I did. I was warmer. I had less issues with the cold than a lot of folks, even though I lost a tremendous amount of weight, had less digestive issues after. I had less weakness and chronic issues. I had less symptoms in a lot of ways, and I just feel so grateful for the whole experience, and particularly for the knowledge that I have in my body now that is so different than what I had before. So thank you so much. Thank you for all of the tremendous outpouring of support and love I have gotten from so many people. It means so much. I appreciate it so much. And thank you for being interested enough in my journey to hear more of these details and more of the things that you didn't get to see on the show. Looking forward to sharing so much more of my story in a variety of different ways. See you later, folks.